Good evening. I figured it's time for another video. It's been a little while since I made a video, not by choice. I've just been pretty busy with, I mean, I don't want to say I've been pretty busy with life, but that is the case though. It makes it feel like I don't care because I have a lot of video ideas and I really want to make them. Mostly I've been busy with my driver's license and I don't know, it just takes a lot of the attention away from my videos, I guess, priorities. But I've been meaning to make videos relating to some of my passions, one of them being dark tourism. Now, in short, dark tourism is the tourism of more macabre places, cemeteries, Chernobyl, for example, Auschwitz would be one. Just things that have very dark histories. The catacombs in Paris, I've actually been to those, and that is another video coming up related to dark tourism. But in today's video, I wanted to talk about a trip I took a little while ago where I visited the Lizzie Borden house. And the sad part is, things like this just affect me. Years ago, I had an issue with fainting in relation to watching certain movies. That is also going to be its own video. I want to make a video about that, but I don't want to go too much into detail about that. I really want to focus on the Lizzie Borden house and the stuff that happened to me in that house, which makes it seem a lot more darker than it is. But I just wanted to make a video about that. And I know these events, so the combination of the episodes that I have and my passion for dark tourism, they kind of clash a little bit. And the Lizzie Borden house has a dark history. And when you take the tour, it's reasonably explicit. So I just wanted to talk, like I said, about what happened to me in the Lizzie Borden house. Do not worry, I am not going to show you any. I'm going to show you photos that I took while I was there, but I'm not going to show you any explicit material. I'm pretty sure YouTube wouldn't appreciate that. I will talk about things that I saw there, but I'm not going to show you those things. But yeah, so the Lizzie Borden house. I'm not going to surmise the whole Lizzie Borden story. There's plenty of documentaries and movies made about these events. But in short, Lizzie Borden was accused, because she was acquitted, but she was accused of murdering her father and stepmother in this house. And it was pretty violent. I think there's nursery rhymes made about it. I think the dad received like 10 to 11 hatchet strikes to the head, and the stepmom like nearly 20. It's pretty gruesome, it's pretty violent, and I went into that house. I went to the house with my girlfriend. We both have the same kind of interest. We like the dark tourism stuff. She's a lot more familiar with some of these things, specifically because I'm not American. I did this on a trip to America, and oh boy, that was an experience for me. That was definitely an experience for me. So the tour started in the little living room, and this man kind of in an outfit from back in the day, he's telling you some of the history, and they're telling you the story kind of chronologically, also based on the rooms that you visit in the house. And in this first room, just like a little bit of the history, who's the father, who's the stepmother, who's Lizzie, and that kind of stuff. And you had a little cabinet there, for example, that already kind of foreshadows what you're gonna see. They have like a skull that is kind of bashed in from the back. It starts kind of tame. I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. I like the old stuff. I'm looking around and everything. I really enjoy this. And then we basically go to like, holy shit. So we go to the next room, and I don't know if we arrived pretty late or if they were finished with this kind of play, because I think it was for the 30-year anniversary. They had actual actors also in all these roles, but we arrived kind of after that, so they were kind of cleaning up stuff. But so in the next room, they had a dummy of the autopsy of, I want to say, the stepmother. I already tried not to look at that because it was reasonably well done. It was open, stuff hanging out. Obviously, it's fake, but that was pretty intense for me already. The dumb thing is, as a kid, I used to love, I mean, I still do, movies like Hellraiser. I used to watch this stuff as breakfast when I was a kid. I like violent movies to a certain degree. But ever since I had those fainting episodes some years ago, a lot of this changed. Mainly the way it affects me mentally. I have these episodes, they call them visivagal syncopes, I think they call it. Again, I'm going to make a video about that in the future. But the bottom line is, it's fainting triggered by different things for different people. For me, it's extreme suffering and very explicit content. Kind of like how, remember in the past, if you watched a movie, somebody got punched, it's usually like kind of off camera, you know, and these days they just show you bashing the face in till it's completely dented, you know, like that's just it's kind of too extreme, that kind of violence for me these days. But so you had the autopsy dummy there. I'm like, okay, I can kind of just not look at it, you know, listen to the story. And then they started talking about the murders and the violence and the autopsies. And the main thing that started triggering me in this room is that on the table they had actual autopsy photos, so the actual autopsy photos of the murders. And I'm standing there, you know, I think my girlfriend was looking around at some stuff over there, and I'm standing at this room. I'm trying to focus really hard on the guy who's telling this story. But meanwhile, like, my curiosity is like, dude, don't look at it. Don't look at it, you know? And then my eyes kind of like, I try to look at it because I kind of don't want to miss out. And yeah, and I started staring a little bit, and then, okay, it's creating too much of a picture in my head. Okay, don't focus on it. But the guy is still telling you everything that happened in very big detail. He was really good at his job, like the guy, he was really good, and that was maybe the problem. And then we moved to the next room. I think that was the room where the father was murdered. And they had a dummy of the father laying on the couch and a sheet over their head. Because I think they replicated the actual murder photos that they had. And I think there was blood there. I don't exactly remember. So if some details are vague on the story or everything, it's because of what was happening to me. So at this point, I start getting really hot. I mean, it was kind of warm that day, but I started getting really hot. I had a bottle of water with me, so I drank. When I get these episodes, it starts out by me getting really hot. And then I get kind of like fuzzy in my head. And that kind of triggers to, I don't know how to explain it. There's a certain feeling in my head where it feels like I'm crying on the inside. It's not emotionally, like actually physically. It's really hard to explain. Either way, it's happened to me a few times in my life. I fainted twice because of it. And this feeling kind of comes back here and there. So I kind of know when it's starting, when I have to pay attention. When it's starting, usually I have to like lift up my legs so that my brain gets more oxygen, because that's the whole point. The oxygen through these fainting episodes, the oxygen is kind of leaving my brain because of these the violence that triggers it. And you know, I gotta drink water, open the window, all that kind of stuff, so I can handle it. But at that moment, it's really intense, and I don't know what to do. So this guy at this point is in very explicit detail saying how the father was murdered while this dummy is there with the blood. The door is still open where you have the autopsy photos, and they purposely tried to make it creepy. That's the whole point of the tour. And it was getting very intense. It was getting very intense. And I remember just drinking the water because it refreshes me. It kind of feels like it gets more oxygen. And it wasn't really helping a lot. And quite honestly, this was the worst part of the tour. Everything else went kind of okay. But yeah, so I'm standing there looking at this corpse, remembering the autopsy photos. This guy's talking about he was whacking the father in the head and all this kind of stuff, the blood everywhere, you know, because he's trying to make it creepy and explicit. My girlfriend is standing next to me and she's looking at me. You can't really tell from the outside. At least I used to think this, you know, it's something that really happens internally. Mentally. And at this point of what's going on is more like her perspective than mine, because I'm completely like blocking everything out. I'm trying so hard to focus, not to think about these things, and the opposite is happening. And she noticed, she was looking at me from the corner of her eye, and she's noticing like something is wrong with me. And she said that afterwards to me, like she could tell something was happening with me, and I didn't even know it was possible. Like, it's hard to describe how much it means to me, like how well she knows me just based off that. And I don't remember if she was asking me something. She asked me if I was alright. I don't know, but she could tell what was happening. Now she was never there before when all these things happened to me in the past, because it was kind of way in the past. It's years ago. But so she just grabbed my hand, and this allowed me to like focus on her holding my hand more so than thinking about the autopsy photos and the murder and all this kind of stuff, which is so strange, because this is what I'm going there for. I went there, for this kind of stuff, to be kind of in the moment. And I guess it's a different thing, like wanting to be there and then being thrown in it so explicitly, because I didn't know they were gonna have the autopsy photos there and all this kind of stuff. I didn't know it was gonna be that brutal. I didn't know much about this story or the history of it. And so I felt my girlfriend's hand just holding my hand, and I don't know why, it was such a relief, such a comfort, knowing that she knew me so well that she could clearly tell something was happening to me without fully understanding. She knows I have this condition, but like she's never seen it or experienced me having this before. And I was literally very close to fainting at that point. So I mentioned it before. It starts out getting really hot, and then you get fuzzy in the head, and the next step is those feelings just getting really intense, and then you faint. You get an episode, I get seizures, and then I've thrown up afterwards, and then I fall and I spaz out on the floor. My brothers were there when this happened to me each time, and they said it was one of the worst things they ever saw. It scared the living light out of them. And the last thing I would want is my girlfriend to see that as well. But so, right at that moment where normally I faint, where if I don't open the window, that's why I kept drinking. I keep drinking with the window. Right before this happened, like feeling her hand, it just kind of calmed me down. It helped me to actually unfocus. And I think at that point the guy was pointing out the clothes that were hanging behind me, and I kind of just kept focusing on the fabric and on the small details and stuff, and divert my eyes from the fake body and the story. I honestly tried to not listen to the story at that point. And all that helped a lot, and it avoided like a major, like, oh my god, if I would have actually, because can you imagine if I'm laying down on the floor of this house that they claim is haunted, or like flipping out, spazzing out, getting like this epileptic attack, and it's just, it would have been absolutely insane. So we continued the tour, and then you go into a lot of the legal details later on that also helped me to unwind a lot, because I kind of like legal stuff, courtroom stuff. I really enjoy that, so I like it that they went into the details of that. But right before we got to that, we went upstairs to where the stepmother got murdered. And they were like, oh yeah, we have a photo. She's laying down on the floor. I had that photo. I'm like, I was just kind of over this, like I can't. And I started to look anyway, and it was less bad. And he talked a lot about the details of the room itself there, more so than the murder. And we moved on, and I remember standing into the room after that, the hallway or whatever, and it started kind of going a little bit crazy again in my head. But then we just went to like the father's room, and he was talking about the money and how people would take the money, and some people feel they were like cursed because they stole the money, they're bringing it back. So I liked all these details, and these random details kind of really helped me just put it out of my head. After that, we went to like the maid's room, I think, upstairs, and the stories were just all like very different. And like the most intense part was really in the beginning, and then afterwards we went to the basement. And in the basement is where they found originally the hatchet head only, that they thought was a murder weapon, but I don't think there was blood on it. I think they could prove it was a murder weapon, because in the end, they say she murdered her, and the movies are about it, and the stories, and the courtroom, and all this kind of stuff. But she was never found guilty. I think they never actually had the murder weapon, even though they say it was a hatchet, and they found a hatchet. They couldn't prove it. So technically, we never know who did it. But yes, we went to the basement for all that stuff. You know, talking about how you could actually sleep in these rooms. By the way, you could rent these rooms were rented out. You could sleep in these rooms, and in the basement also. Like people come there, they hold like seances around October and that kind of stuff to make it like extra creepy. They had a place in the basement. I think it was a wash basin or a stove. I don't remember exactly, but it had like this ghost face. If you took a flash photo, you could see like a ghost face, because they thought they really put in this haunted aspect and everything. And it was such an insane experience. Now, my experience in the catacombs in Paris was very imposing. It's a very imposing experience, but it was very different in a very different way. I didn't really... I'll make it like that. I'm going to make another video about it. I don't want to talk about that too much. It's definitely going to come up in another video. But my experience in the LIZZIE Borden house was just very, very similar to when I watch a movie that just gets way too intense and it shouldn't be watching. It doesn't happen with all movies, but in general, the way suffering is depicted in more detail. Like if you have a movie like Saw, like I like those movies. But it's basically just violence for the sake of violence, like an arm gets ripped off or whatever. That doesn't really bother me. I saw 300 recently for the first time. Incredible movie, very artful. I liked it a lot. It's very like war violence. It doesn't bother me. It's in delayed, explicit suffering, you know. And the way this guy was telling the stories in the LIZZIE Borden house was like that, to prolong the experience. And I think a combination of that, being actually in the house, those autopsy photos specifically, it was just way too much. It's literally the same thing. It's just triggering me, and it was an insane experience. It was so intense. I like doing it, and I want to do more stuff like that. There's more places I'd love to visit. I guess maybe it's also that in America, you have Halloween, you have these haunted experiences, these haunted houses. You don't have that much in Europe, specifically where I live. And I still enjoyed the experience. But while I was in the house at one point, I was definitely thinking like, why did I do this? Or why am I here? Because the story itself isn't even that crazy, really. It's definitely a really violent murder, but it's in the way they portray it and they depict it and they visualize it with the mannequins, the autopsy mannequins, the corpse mannequins, having the actual photos there and stuff. It was absolutely crazy. It was crazy. Let me know if you're familiar with the story of LIZZIE Borden. If you enjoy dark tourism. I am definitely gonna still do the one for the catacombs in Paris. That was an amazing experience in a very different way, which is crazy because that was way more real. It was more tangible in a way. Maybe it's also because like I don't believe in ghosts or anything, but once you're in it and they try to feed you that stuff, it just I don't know, my brain works differently. I overthink a lot of things, and that doesn't help when you're putting me face to face with these things. It's just crazy that you can actually rent these rooms and sleep in this house. I don't believe in ghosts, but like, yeah, you ain't getting me to sleep in that house. Let me know if you enjoyed dark tourism. Like I said, if you're familiar with the story, it wasn't a video to talk about the details of these murders or anything. I just wanted to talk about my experiences of me almost fainting in the LIZZIE Borden house. I'm curious if people had similar experiences like this, be it in the LIZZIE Borden house or anywhere else. It was definitely intense, and I still vividly see in my head the table with those autopsy photos. Again, I don't think the autopsy body was supposed to be there at that point, but I mean, it was, and that didn't help. I remember the guy talking about Perzewold. They liked pears. She liked pears, something like that. Like, I think I tried to focus on the pears a lot. I'm like, I like pears a lot, actually. I don't know. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. I want to thank you for watching. My links to social media are in the video description below. There's a lot more videos coming. More Halloween videos. More dark tourism for sure. I have a bunch of like spooky story related stuff. I have a lot of ideas. Sorry for the lack of uploads recently. It's definitely not because I don't want to make these videos, because I really enjoy making videos on this channel. It's a lot of fun, and I just want to thank you for subscribing and watching and enjoying my content. And last thing I want to say, just be kind to one another, even in the dark.